Welcome to HR Hacks and Halos, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on workplace culture, calling out the bad while shining a light on the good, with me, your host, Jivan Dempsey. I'm a HR consultant passionate about transforming the way we work. From confronting toxic bosses to celebrating positive change, this is your space for real talk, actionable insights, and the occasional spark of inspiration. So grab your coffee and let's dive in. In this episode, I'm talking to Nick James, founder and CEO of Expert Empires, known for creating high-profile events for coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. His own personal development began at just 12 years old when he attended a Tony Robbins seminar, and this left a lasting impression. So by the time he was a teenager, Nick was an active crew member for Tony Robbins at many of his events and gained early exposure to leadership and motivational practices and used that influence to become a successful entrepreneur. I talked to him about that experience and what he learned about himself and the importance of mindset, emotional intelligence, and resilience in business leadership, and why it's so important to surround yourself with the right people, which for him includes his family, and how he began such a successful business empire. He also talks about the importance of values in business, how they shape company culture, and why any toxicity should be stamped out as soon as it arises. So that's probably enough of me nattering on. Let's now listen to what Nick has to say. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to HR Hacks and Halos, a podcast dedicated to calling out toxic work behaviours to change company culture. And today I'm joined by Nick James. So Nick, welcome. It's a real pleasure for me to have you on my podcast.
Oh, well, thanks, Jivan. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
How long have you been sort of part of the Expert Empires group?
Yeah, so we actually ran our first Expert Empires event in 2017. So we've been doing like the current business model, the current version of it, we're doing 7 years. So we ran our first big event, May 2017. We've run, I think, 14 since then. And been running masterminds, coaching programs, etc. for small business owners, entrepreneurs since then. But actually started my first business in 2008. So been in and around, the entrepreneurial, small business growth industry space, if you want to call it that, for 16 years. Makes me feel really old.
Wow. I don't think it's old at all, but there you go. Before we get into the work that you do with business owners and culture and leadership, etc., I really am intrigued by your backstory, because I was really taken by the fact that when you were a small child, when you were kind of like a youngster, that you kind of like became part of Tony Robbins' world, and actually your mum took you along to one of the seminars, and then as a teenager you were actually crewing for Tony Robbins himself at his events. How do you think that experience kind of shaped you then and has shaped you now as an adult?
Yeah, I think massively. I always say I feel extremely fortunate, very blessed, very lucky to have been given that opportunity. I think most teenagers don't get that opportunity, and so I don't take it lightly or take it for granted. I was certainly given a big advantage, a big step up, if you like, or leg up. And yeah, being in that environment. Obviously now I run events, so it was kind of the best apprenticeship, if you want to call it that, I could ever have had for what I do now. Working closely in and around events with Tony Robbins, and he's, for me, still the greatest. When it comes, my 15-year-old would say he's the GOAT. When it comes to running, conferences, events, helping people with their personal development, their business growth, their doing more. He's brilliant at it, and so that experience was really, really valuable. And my mum invited me to go to one of his events that she was going to when I was 12, and that was the start of a journey throughout my teenage years, as he said, traveling all over the world, America, Australia, the Far East, all over Europe. First of all, attending these events, these trainings, which gave me the opportunity to kind of work on myself and build my confidence and all that sort of stuff. I was like a typical teenage boy, not particularly self-confident or assured, and really helped bring me out of my shell. And then later on, of course, set me up to start my business and do what I do today.
That's amazing. So you were obviously going to Tony Robbins at a time when he wasn't really that well known outside of the US, because it's kind of like a recent phenomenon, as far as I'm aware, in terms of his sort of fame and reputation across the globe. How did your mum kind of like find him, and how did that kind of come about?
Well, I mean, you say he wasn't particularly well known outside the US, but there was back then, I mean, QVC is still a thing, right? I don't know. I don't watch any TV really, other than live sport. I don't tend to watch TV. But yeah, QVC, he used to run late night infomercials, talking about, selling his home study courses, which were all like cassette tapes. You know, that's the generation I'm talking about. And so my mum, and he'd written books. So, my mum was actually working as funny enough, the HR director of a company at the time. And she, one of her team came into her office and said, you should read this book. It's amazing. It's, really, really good. And she did what most people do and just put it on the shelf and never read it. And then about 6 or 12 months later, the same guy comes back into her office. He's like, oh, the guy I gave you his book, it's amazing. He's coming to the UK. He's going to run a live event here. We should go. And he kind of pitched her as the HR director on using some of the budget for training and development for her and a small number of her team to go to one of these Unleash the Power Within events, what it was called, it still is. And so she went with, I think, a small team of maybe 4 or 5 people to Unleash the Power Within. Absolutely loved it. It changed her life. And then she decided to take her training, her development further. And she was spending, to do the kind of advanced trainings that he runs, it was quite a lot of time away from home in the States, and she was a single mum. And so she was like, well, the big problem is that I've got to work out childcare and don't really want to leave my son. And I was 12. So back then they used to run like a kids camp, like a youth camp alongside the main Tony Robbins events. And so they were like, yeah, that's not a problem. Just bring him. And, it was, I suppose it was part, for the young ones, it was more like childcare. And for the older ones, I was, 12, 13. It was more like a youth version of what they were doing in the main event, in the main training. So I got around that and experienced that kind of personal development from a very young age. And then, like I said, I went for many years, first of all, attending the trainings, the events myself, and then ended up working in and around the events as a volunteer. And yeah, it was the best experience I could have had for what I do now, for sure.
Yeah. Did you take to it? Because I've my children, if I even dared to say to them, oh, we're going to go across to Tony Robbins event, they would absolutely, they'd be running for the hills. So did you kind of like just naturally take to it and their style? I
think there was a couple of things. I think one, I'd seen the transformation in my mum. So I'd seen how much it had impacted her. And so that was, massive positive. She'd turned her life around in a relatively small period of time. So I think there was that. I think she'd given me one of his books, which is called Notes from a Friend. It's a really small book, like only takes a couple of hours to read. And I read that and quite liked it. So that was a little taster. And the thing I always say is, it was in Hawaii for 2 weeks. Yeah. And the alternative, it was in term time. So the alternative was stay at home in Birmingham with my grandparents and go to school. So, I guess how bad can it be? 2 weeks in Hawaii. So, yeah, I think that was probably, there was a combination of factors which made me receptive and open.
Yeah. Brilliant. I suppose when you put it like that, if I kind of said that to my kids, I think they will probably say the same thing. Yeah, all right then. Who is this Tony Robbins guy? I will go.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's brilliant. All right. So so obviously Tony Robbins, he kind of like works on mindset. He works on your your development as an individual, but he also does quite a lot of stuff around business as well. How did those sort of skills in around mindset kind of like influence the man you are today in terms of business owner?
Yeah, I think I didn't learn any, I didn't really do any of the business training that he ran or runs. But a lot of the kind of foundational mindset and personal development training is so relevant to being a business owner or leading people. You know, if you listen to this and you're HR director, senior leader in a company, there's so much of it that's relevant. So a couple of things that really stand out for me. The first one is, and I believe that being a great leader, whether that's CEO or founder of your own business or, like I said, senior positions, being a great leader is really about mastering your emotional and mental state.
Yeah.
Because one thing is for sure, like building a team, leading a team, running a business, it's like probably one of the biggest challenges you could ever experience, because there's so many moving parts. You've got leading people in a team, you've got people joining new, and then you've got people leaving, and you've got customers and clients to worry about, and all of this stuff all at the same time, and managing the finances, if that's part of your role. It's a lot, right? So for me, it's about, are you able to manage that mental and emotional state? And if you are, it gives you a much better chance of success. And if you're not, then it's going to be real hard work. And so for me, one of the most basic foundational principles that I still remember now I learned when I was a kid was how to manage your mental and emotional state. And it's only ever three things. It's your physiology, body language. That's the first one. It's the language you use internally and externally, the things you say out loud, the things you say to yourself. And it's what you choose to focus on. And so, I think when you understand that really there's only three things that cause you to feel a certain way. And I think the most important part is that you are in control of how you feel at any given time, which is easy to say and harder to do. The truth is, most people are running on autopilot. They're not in control of how they feel and how they act and how they behave. They mostly react. And so, for me, like just that one thing, going, hey, there's three ways that you can influence how you feel at any given time, how you use your physical body, what language you use, and what you choose to focus on. And really not just understanding that theoretically, but actually applying it in your life. Like that alone, that's transformational for a lot of people if they can actually do that. But I think in business in particular, like the source of most problems is blame and finger pointing, and it's no one's willing to take ownership or responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. And whether that's the mistake that was made or what was said, a lot of time people are defending the position and saying, like, it's all your fault. And when we can take complete ownership and go, look, how have I created this? What have I done to create this? And when we have that attitude or that approach, I think that for me is true leadership. Being able to lead yourself first and manage your own mental and emotional state. That is true leadership, because that allows you to then lead others.
Yeah. I like that, because it sounds as though what you're saying is that whole kind of like mindset bit, that kind of being able to control and manage your emotional state, etc. It's very much the secret sauce, isn't it? That kind of like, if you get that right, then everything else will fall into place. Obviously, you can't always be in control of your customers and market, etc., etc. But actually, if you've got that under control, then actually the rest will follow suit.
Yeah, well, the way I always see it is in business, there are so many things you can't control, and probably only one thing you can, which is how you feel, how you choose to behave, react. Yet most of the time, most of the people are trying to influence the things they can't control. Other people, the market, customers, etc., etc. And like, you can't control those things. You can try, but you can't truly control them. You can't truly influence those outcomes. So, but the one thing you can control is how you choose to feel, how you choose to react. And most of the time we're not thinking about that.
Yeah. So do you encourage the people that you work with to kind of like just let go and kind of just control what you can control? Everything else will just kind of fall into place, and not to worry too much about those things that you can't control.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. It's like, I don't worry about a lot of the things I can't control. I go, look, people, like we had recently, of course, general election, new government. people are coming to me, what do you think? What's it going to be like? Labour government. I'm going, I don't really care. And people thought I was being really blasé about it. I'm like, I can choose to feel really worried about what happens next and what's going to happen with corporation tax and what's going to be like for small businesses. But worrying about it's not going to change it. It's almost a waste of time. I want to be informed so that I'm aware of, what's going on in the economy, current affairs, but I don't want to get too obsessed with it, because if I get too obsessed with it, like most of the time that leads to fear, negativity. And I'm like, as long as I'm aware of it, I can't control it, but let's think about what I can control. And what I can control is how I choose to react, how I might adapt our business strategy based upon that. I can control all of that stuff. So I'd always rather focus on what I can control rather than what I can't.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it is kind of like letting go, isn't it? It's kind of like just accept sphere of influence and control. Do you think also, the focus that you've got on on mindset and what you can control, does that also kind of give you a strength? Because, what I always hear is that for every successful entrepreneur, there's about 6 or 7 business ventures that they had that have kind of fallen over and not done as well as they were hoping, and kind of recognizing when you have to let something go and then move on to the next venture.
Well, I think it's definitely true that a lot of the most successful business people, entrepreneurs, have had a lot of adversity and have been resilient and overcome that. I certainly have. I've had past businesses where I'm partnerships that dissolved and, had to start from zero again and work my way back up, if you like. And I think if you've got that resilience, if you've got the mental strength, then you're more likely to be able to go again. I remember vividly, like built a relatively decent sized business with a friend of mine. We parted ways. And so I went from, having a pretty significant multi-7-figure business with a team and clients and everything to almost overnight had nothing. And I remember thinking to myself, like, it was like I'd worked for it was 7 years, like climbing the mountain, and we hadn't reached the summit, but we'd climbed a lot and worked hard, and it had been exhausting. And then it was like all of a sudden I'm down at the bottom again. And I remember thinking, like, it's like looking up at a big mountain and going, have I really got it? Have I really got the desire to do that again, knowing how hard it was? What was really interesting was the next time it was much easier, because I'd already walked the path. I already knew the tricks. I already knew the shortcuts. I already knew how I could, skip steps, which were a waste of time in the first place when I did them first time around. So, it actually took me only 18 months to get the business back to that size from a standing start, whereas it took 6 years first time out. So I think definitely the resilience and mental strength and go, to what can I control? What can I do now? But also the experience, building on the experience. I think reflecting on that and using that going forward was really helpful. But yeah, there was definitely times, I'm not going to lie, there was definitely times in that moment where I was like, can I really be bothered? Like, would it be easy to just knock it on the head and go and get a job?
But you were really brave. You let something go that had been your baby, that you had worked really, really hard on for 6 years, and you kind of just fell out of love with it in a way, and kind of like let it go. That must have been really tough.
Yeah, very tough. And like, again, like full transparency, it wasn't my choice. Like at the point, given the choice, I would have chosen to stay.
Yeah.
But that wasn't an option. So it was really hard, but in a way it was the best thing that ever happened, because it was like a forcing function for me to have to go and start again. Whereas, if I'd have been given the choice, I probably would have stayed doing what I was doing and then wouldn't have made the progress I've made. So, I do think that at the time, I remember people saying to me, like, you'll look back on this in years to come and it'll be the best thing that ever happened to you. I'll be like, that is easy for you to say, but right now it doesn't feel that way. Right now it feels like the worst thing that's ever happened in my career, and I'm not feeling particularly positive about it. But that's another point, is surrounding yourself with the right people. I had great people that I could bounce off and that I could turn to for help and support. And that really helped.
Yeah. So again, that's really interesting, because obviously they were right, because you took the learnings from that journey and you've packaged it up, and it's now something that you actually teach as part of your business.
Yeah, I guess the point is it just didn't feel like it at the time. And I know
Yeah.
the reason I share that and the reason I know that is that there might be people listening to this going like, all right, Mr. Positive Mindset, and it's all great, but like right now, it doesn't feel great. And yeah, I understand that, because I've certainly been in that position. And I've just been teaching a workshop today, and I've been saying, look, like everyone has problems, challenges, issues in the business. The bigger you get, the bigger they tend to be. And like, I don't think you're ever going to be in a place where that's not the case. So almost be accepting of that. And, for me, the bigger the problem, the challenge, the issue that you get, it's almost like the price of success to a degree.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Let's move on to talk more around sort of company culture, because obviously you've built up expert empires. You've got, and full disclosure, I'm one of your mastermind. I like what I see, and I see the kind of an experience, the kind of values and the culture that you're kind of creating. What was in your mind when you first built it up in terms of the culture that you wanted for your business?
Yeah, I think I was very fortunate that I've not only Tony Robbins, I've learned a lot from people that have, walked the path that are several steps further forward compared to where I was or where I am. And there's actually a company that I still work quite closely with now in the States who they've built this amazing business with a phenomenal team and great culture. And so I learned a lot from them about how to do that. So when I started this business, that was always like my model of success. It was like having an amazing team of people who have got shared values, that love what they do, and it's a positive environment. I was like, I want to create that. And so, well, Jivan, you've been to our office, you know what it's like and what the environment's like. And I basically modeled a lot of what I do and how I've done it on them. I was like, the atmosphere, the energy, the environment that they've created in their business. By the way, give them a shout out. They're a software company called KEAP. And I know the CEO, his name's Clayt Mask, amazing guy. And I've seen how he's built Keep and how he leads and the environment, the culture he's created. And I was like, I want to create that. And I'm not saying that I have, or that we're anywhere near their level of success or scale, but having somebody or a company to model really helps. Because when it came to creating the vision for our business, when it came to creating the values, when it came to creating a lot of that stuff, that they were the model really, and then we could just adapt and make it our own. So I think quite helpful to have. I talk a lot about having mentors, having guides, having people that you work with and model. For me, that's really important.
Yeah. What's been the benefits of bringing in that kind of those values and that sort of positive culture to your business?
Yeah, I think values in particular, I often talk about this in my trainings as well. So for me, we created the values originally for internal benefit. It was like so that everybody in the business understands, like, I don't like using this term, but like the rules of the game. It's like, these are the standards that I'm committed to and that we expect. And if they resonate, then great, come on in. And if they don't, then don't. And that's fine. Doesn't make you a bad person, just means that maybe we're not a good fit. So I created the values for internal benefit. It was like, so we had, as we built the team, that everyone would be on the same page. What I didn't realize at the time was, that, but I was also creating this like amazing marketing campaign which wasn't the intention, but where we would get new clients, and then I'd ask, so what was it that attracted you to become a client of ours? Why us? And I kept hearing, your values. I kept hearing people say things like, the way your team shows up, the culture you've created. Because I'm quite public with our values, they're in all of our marketing literature, they're on our website. Because of that, people started saying, they come to our events and I talk about the values a bit. And they were like, oh, when you mentioned your values, it just like struck a chord with me. It aligned. And so that wasn't the point of creating the values in the first place. It was more for internal use. But I was also creating, I didn't realize, a really powerful external marketing campaign to attract people towards us. And then the actual practical application and how we use them internally, I think I see the values as like a framework for us ensuring that attitude and behavior is aligned. And so, we'll every month in every team member's one-to-one that they have with the person that they report into, they give themselves a score for each value. So 1 to 5. 5 is I am like the personification of this value. 0 is like, well, you can't have a 0. It's 1 to 5. But 1 is like way out of alignment with this value. It's a big problem. They give themselves a score, but then also their leader gives them a score as well. And obviously if there's a discrepancy, then that opens up a conversation. And really all of this, I suppose the big benefit of having like the company values aligned and created and everyone understand what they are is they create a framework to have difficult conversations. And I think a lot of times in business and in life, where most problems or challenges come from is the avoidance of the difficult conversation. So for me, the values give us a framework for that without it being, like telling somebody off. It's more, hey, look, I feel like you're currently a 3 on this value, and here's the reason, because here's what I've noticed, here's what I've seen, what do you think? And then, the people in the team can discuss and work together with that framework. Whereas, it's I think without the values, it's quite easy to pull somebody up and say, yeah, that's not acceptable. It just feels like you're telling them off. And let's face it, no one wants that. Whereas if we can have a conversation about this value and here's what I've noticed and how can we do it better, that's more of a coaching environment rather than a telling environment.
Yeah, absolutely. What resonates to me in that is a story that you told when we were together about using those values to actually then recruit your new team members, actually kind of making sure that those values are living and breathing, not just in terms of performance, but also in terms of the people that you're bringing in. So you're not necessarily upsetting that culture and making sure that you have a very close match.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll feature for some job roles, not all, but we'll feature the values in our job ads. So we'll go, hey, here's what our values are, here's what we stand for. And then as part of the application process, it'd be like, which 2 stand out most to you? Which ones do you align with best? Why? What do you like about them? And then, we might ask questions like that in the interview process as well, just to check in and make sure. Look, I'd love to say that we get it absolutely spot on every time and every hire we've ever made has been a roaring success, and it hasn't. But I think
I wouldn't have believed you anyway.
But it increases your likelihood of success, doesn't it? That's all. Look, we all know if you've been in business any length of time and you've hired people and you built a team, we all know that sometimes we get it wrong. And that doesn't make the person a person. It just means that we got it wrong. And that they're not on the same page as us, and that's fine. That, like I said, sometimes that's that we're wrong. But for me, having the values be part of the process it enhances your likelihood of success. It doesn't guarantee success, but it enhances the likelihood of success, and it decreases the likelihood of making a bad hire.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's interesting because I, as a HR leader, I've worked in lots of different organizations, and certainly in the work that I do, both smaller organizations and bigger organizations. And sometimes the smaller ones actually reflect their values because they can, because they're closer in a way to their leaders, and bigger organizations can sometimes struggle with it. So I've seen a mix of how those values have actually played through into company culture. But the key and the common thing for all of the cases I've seen is around the leader. If the leader espouses them, then actually the whole thing kind of hangs together. And I can hear it in your voice and how you're actually talking about it. People will never own up to the fact that they've got or have a toxic work culture. But I've seen how it gets demonstrated, like, moaning and groaning, this 4-day week kind of nonsense. And we can't do this. And I don't really want to introduce flexibility. And all of these people have kind of issues and blah, blah, blah. So it kind of gets demonstrated in lots of other ways. You've seen all sorts of different businesses come through your door and business owners in terms of supporting. what are the kind of examples that you've seen in terms of the cultures that they're kind of bringing in?
What's interesting, you use the words toxic culture, is a lot of times the most toxic culture is the one that's not obvious. So when you think about toxic culture, you think about people screaming and shouting and ranting and raving. And that's quite obvious. But for me, the more toxic culture is when it's all happening behind the scenes. Like that's worse in a way because it's harder to detect. We've had times, and we've definitely had certain areas of our business where there's been places where it's been a bit toxic, and I go, right, we need to fix that. It's my job as the owner of the business, the leader, to fix that. And it's never done. It's never perfect. My coach who I work with, the way that he explains it, which I really like, is having like team hygiene. In the like good hygiene is to brush your teeth every day. Yeah. And if you go a week without brushing your teeth, you're going to have stinky breath. And if you go a month without brushing your teeth, then you're going to have a big problem. And if you go 6 months, then your teeth are going to fall out. I don't know how long it will take, but you get my point. And so it's not a one and done. And what a lot of companies do is they go, right, so once a year, we'll do this big thing. We'll do an event for all of our team, and we'll talk values and culture and all that sort of stuff. We tick the box, and then we do nothing for a year. And it's like brushing your teeth. You can't do it once a year and expect that to be enough. So for me, like the maintenance of the culture and the discussion of the values is a weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual job. It's an annual task. But doing it regularly, really, you go like, how can we embed the values of the culture on a daily basis? Everybody in the business might not do something every single day, but you want them to be something happening on a daily basis. And for me, that's good team hygiene, more culture hygiene.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that analogy. Well, actually, I don't love that analogy because it made me want to check my teeth for any green bits that are hanging in there. But I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I do like that phrase, that team hygiene. I think it's a really, really clever one.
Yeah. And I think, your question was like, what have we seen come through the doors? Everything. Everything you can possibly imagine. We've seen like absolutely toxic culture where people are screaming, shouting, ranting, raving. But also, like, we've seen the opposite, not the polar opposite, but like I've even experienced this where in our business, there's been times where we've been in what I would probably call the friend zone. And there's a bit of false harmony. Like everyone's getting on, everyone's pretending it's all good, but under the surface, there's an undercurrent of discourse, or there's an undercurrent of a couple of people not getting on, or whatever it is. And it's like the artificial harmony or the friend zone. That's equally as dangerous or toxic as the very obvious toxic culture. So I've seen everything you can possibly imagine. I've experienced a lot of it myself, good and bad. And for me, it's a weekly at least discipline to work on the culture, work on the alignment of the team and the values. Otherwise, you get stinky breath.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it? You kind of really appreciate a good working culture, a good kind of positive, work behaviors when you've actually been through it yourself. And I've had experience of it on a number of occasions when you've been, harassment, bullying, et cetera, microaggression from bosses. And you actually appreciate it when you go into an environment where actually that isn't happening and you can kind of see the difference. So absolutely.
Yeah. And look, I don't think any business or anyone is perfect. Like you have to kind of accept that it's not going to be all sunshines and rainbows. It's going to, at times, there'll be little niggles and issues. And the question is, how long do you let that stuff fester for before it gets addressed? And the longer you leave it, the worse it gets.
Yeah. What I like about you, Nick, is that you do radiate a lot of positivity, but it must be exhausting to always be this positive. There must be times when you feel really quiet, and just want to, I don't know, shout and scream and rant and rave and kind of have to and do something different.
Yeah, I think, first of all, as a leader, CEO, business owner, leader in an organization, as I said, like for me, the game is like, can you manage your own mental and emotional state? And in order to do that, like we do need to look after ourselves, mind, body, spirit. And, that means having downtime and giving yourself the license to switch off and relax. because you can't be on all the time. So I think there's definitely that, first of all. I'm quite good at switching off. I'm quite good at compartmentalizing my life and going like, hey, I'm in work mode here, and as soon as I walk through the door at home, I'm not. Or at the weekend, I'm not. I'm with my wife, my kids. I'm, doing things that I enjoy, that fill me up, that I don't have to think about that for a while. So I'm quite good at that. I think that helps. And look, like I say, we're not perfect. So I certainly have the capacity to sometimes get pissed off if something's not going the way I want it to. Well, I definitely have the capacity to do that. Really, the question is, like, it's not about being superhuman and never having that. It's about how quickly can you turn it around and go, right, okay, now I've had that moment. Now, how do we come out of it? How do we come out the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. It's recognizing, it's having that self-awareness to turn that around. You've just talked about your kind of like your work-life balance. Do you feel that it's, is it at the right place? Do you sometimes end up working more than you should be? How do you balance all of that?
Generally speaking, most of the time, I'm as I said, pretty good at compartmentalizing my life and having pretty good balance. That said, it does ebb and flow, and there are times where there's just a lot. Like October, for example, we're recording this in November, but last month I think it was 15 or 16 days of like stage time, if you want to call it that. So delivering training and events. And I don't know if that sounds like a lot or a little, but if you've done it, you realise it's a lot, because that's half of the month, including weekends. And like delivering training and events isn't my only job. So I'm also the CEO of the group of companies. I also still get involved in some of the sales and marketing processes. I'm still involved in a lot of that. So if it was my only job, you'd be like, oh, okay, so that's, if there's 20 working days in a month, that's 3/4 of your working days. I'm like, yeah, but it's not. So that's part of my job. So yeah, October was mental, like crazy busy. I think I had 3 days off in October, but that's not normal for me. That was probably a one-off. In fact, I don't think that I've ever done that much in a single month. But equally, at the end of it, I was like, we had an amazing month, great results in the business. And me and my wife went to Mexico for 5 days for a retreat at the start of November. And, so there was a payoff. So, it was worth it. But yeah, I mean, in that month, there was no work-life balance to be spoken of. And at times, people leave your business. It happens. You're not going to keep all your people forever. So when that happens, obviously there are consequences depending on what roles they are, will impact you differently. So, currently we don't have a finance manager in our business. So I'm doing more on the finance side than I normally would. So yeah, it ebbs and flows.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just talk to you very briefly about, one of the things that you were saying that again very much resonated was that you do as a family, you do family values, and you take the lessons from the business and you apply that to the family. Again, you encourage your family to take part in the giving, the social kind of giving, in terms of getting these boxes ready to give to families of food packages and parcels. I just love the way that you kind of use your family, that they're very much part of the business and part of so when you're talking to us as business owners, we kind of get to know you and we get to know the family. Was that something that just kind of the family just accept that they're always going to be kind of mentioned and they're part of the way that you kind of work with your business owners?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're that aware. Like my wife and my kids probably don't know that I talk about them as much as I do. When I'm training or delivering, they're probably not aware of it. They come to our events. We do 2 big events a year in London, and they come to those, so they see those, and they're part of that. As you say, we support a charity called Basket Brigade Birmingham, which delivers hampers and food to people in need just before Christmas. We do that every year, and I get them involved in that. But that was something that it's actually the charity originally was founded by Tony Robbins. So I've known about that and been part of that since I was a teenager. So I kind of grew up with it. So I know I see the value of it. And so, I want my kids to get involved and they do. And that's really nice. So, but apart from that, I mean, they're not that heavily involved in the business, really. I mean, we talk a little bit about it when I'm at home, but not loads. But as you say, we've taken a lot of the things that we've done to build and grow our business, and then I've applied those in our family dynamics. So, things like working on our family values, and when you the same process that I teach people to establish your business values, we use as a family, me, my wife, and my two boys. So we've got our family values now on the wall, in the hallway as you walk in, through the front door, on the right hand side as you go into the kitchen. So we see them all the time, and we talk about them regularly. And I think for me, it's the example I always give is, bear in mind, I've got two boys, they're 15 and 11. So, and they are stereotypical boys. They play a lot of football. They bring muddy, sweaty kits home and leave them on the floor and all that. I go, look, what most parents have to do is have to nag and whinge and moan about picking up the dirty football kit. And we do too. I'm not pretending that's not the case. But when we can have that conversation and align it about the family values that we all agreed, that's a different conversation than just whinging and moaning and ranting and raving about the thing. So again, it's about shaping behavior, and this is why I talk about values in your business. It's like, if you want to elicit certain behaviors in your team, do that through values rather than through telling people what you want them to do. It's a very different dynamic, I think.
Yeah, no, I love that. It must be really interesting for your children's friends as they come in through the door, and the first thing they see is the family values on the hallway. You must have some quite interesting conversations between the little boys. Yeah,
I think it's probably one of those things that we don't really share that much outside the fact. Obviously, people come to the house, then they see them, but I think most people, like most of my wife's friends and the kids' friends, know what I do. So, like, for example, Zach's 15, right? So him and his mates, they're all on Instagram, and they see my Instagram, stories and reels and whatever. So when they see stuff like that, they're not that surprised. They go, well, it's not, a lot of his friends, the parents might be, I don't know, they might have corporate roles. They might be, doctors, dentists, whatever, professional roles. And so they look at what I do and it's completely alien. And so it's kind of expected that, I suppose, we're a bit different and a bit quirky, and we've got family values on the wall, and that's probably not that weird because they know they've got the context of what I do as well. Yeah, it's probably all kind of whispering out, it's your weird dad again, isn't it? Yeah. which is the way my son's conversations go. Look, I know what it's like being a teenager. I'm pretty certain Zach's mates tease him about me. I'm pretty sure. Like, I know that I would if I was his mate, so I'm not surprised they do, and I'm all right with it. Yeah, brilliant. All right. Well, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. I could talk to you for so much longer, but I know you're up against time, etc. And I know because you said, try and keep things in small little chunks. So I am going to let you go. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you today. Oh, thanks, Jivan. It's been great being on, and really appreciate it. And good luck with the podcast. See you soon. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It's great to hear Nick's take on leadership and the importance of balancing positivity with reality in building a great company culture, starting, of course, with self-management and the ability to control your own emotional state. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of HR Hacks and Halos. If you found value today, please don't forget to subscribe, share, or leave a review. It really helps to amplify the conversation and to drive change for everyone, because every workplace can be transformed when we challenge the bad and celebrate the good. So join me again next time for more HR hacks to transform workplace culture. Together, let's polish some more HR halos. So till next time, see ya.